My colleagues alerted me to a couple questions I think I may have forgotten to ask you. One is, sorry, I'm just going through my notes. Well, we talked a few minutes ago about this birthday book that there's been press about. I understand you don't remember anything with President Trump, or a lot about the book anyway. Do you remember asking President Trump to submit a letter for that?
I do not.
And do you remember, would you have been the one to do that, or would somebody else have done that?
I did ask some people. I don't remember Mr. Trump. I don't remember who I did ask, but Epstein also asked people himself directly.
Okay.
So it could have happened that way, if it happened at all.
I'm trying to find on that. Where is that?
You mentioned Ehud Barak.
Yes.
What was his involvement?
This would have been in the later 2000s, so I do not know how they met, but I do know that they, I don't know if friendly would be the right word, I don't know that, but I know that they saw each other, and only because my father, anything that touches Israel or the state of Israel, I'm always interested in, because my father loved Israel, and so I pay attention to it, and we have ties to Israel.
When you said it was later, though,
ties meaning friends and family relations.
Was the prominent was Mr. Barak, Prince Barak? Do you know what the nature of his relationship was with Mr. Epstein?
I don't.
Do you know? Were you ever with them together?
I think I have a memory of meeting Ehud, but I don't know if he was with Epstein or, I don't remember. I just know that I did see him, and I'm struggling to remember the context around it. But I'm sure it happened, but it must have been very brief, because I don't have any serious memory of it, any deep memory of it.
And maybe this is obvious.
And maybe it comes also because I've read it in the press, that may be something that brought it to my memory. So that's also, I think the press has been very contaminating. So it's hard sometimes to separate those stories from, your memory sometimes.
Did you ever observe President Trump receive a massage?
Never.
Under pressure to release files relating to its investigation of Jeffrey Epstein, the US Department of Justice instead on Friday made public an interview carried out with his imprisoned associate, Ghislaine Maxwell. According to a transcript, Maxwell, serving a 20-year sentence for helping Epstein sexually abuse underage girls, said she never saw US President Donald Trump behave inappropriately.
I don't think they were close friends, or I certainly never witnessed the president in any of, I don't recall ever seeing him in his house, for instance. I actually never saw the president in any type of massage setting. I never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting in any way. The president was never inappropriate with anybody. In the times that I was with him, he was a gentleman in all respects.
Maxwell also said she was not aware of any rumored client list belonging to the late financier. He died in a Manhattan jail cell in 2019 while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges. New York's chief medical examiner determined that Epstein's death was a suicide by hanging. In the interview, Maxwell said she did not witness any abuse by Epstein, her longtime boyfriend. She also did not implicate any other prominent individuals in wrongdoing. During Maxwell's month-long trial in Manhattan, jurors heard emotional and explicit testimony from 4 women who said Maxwell recruited and groomed them for abuse by Epstein. 3 of the 4 said Maxwell herself touched their bare breasts or took part in the encounters, which often began as massages. Maxwell, a former British socialite, was interviewed last month by Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. She was speaking on the condition that she not be prosecuted for any self-incriminating statements, but that she could be prosecuted if she lied. It is rare for a Justice Department official as senior as Blanche, who has also served as Trump's personal lawyer, to directly interview a criminal defendant. The interview also came as Trump sought to fight off criticism from his conservative base of supporters and congressional Democrats over the DOJ's decision not to release the Epstein files, having earlier pledged to do so. Epstein's death, coupled with his friendships with powerful people like Trump and former Democratic President Bill Clinton, has fueled conspiracy theories that other people were involved in his crimes, and that he was murdered to cover that up. No one other than he and Maxwell have been charged with crimes. Maxwell, who pleaded not guilty to the criminal charges brought against her in 2020, has asked the US Supreme Court to overturn her conviction.
Good morning.
Her attorney David Marcus said in a statement on Friday that the DOJ interview supports Maxwell's argument that she is innocent. Marcus has previously said Maxwell has not held discussions with Trump about a possible pardon, but that she would welcome relief. A week after the interview, Maxwell was moved from a low-security prison facility in Florida to a less restrictive prison camp in Texas.
All right, now let's broaden this conversation out. Joining me to do so is former CIA analyst Buck Sexton. He's a nationally syndicated radio host with the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show, and nationally syndicated political reporter Selena Zito. Also, we have with us Fox News contributor Jason Chaffetz. Let's take what we've heard so far, Buck, and tell me what you make of what she has to say about President Trump, about the client list, about Bill Clinton.
Well, I think she's largely affirming what is already known and not really advancing the knowledge of the case at all, which is unsurprising if you look at the motivations that she would have at this point. But first, in terms of what is known and solidifying what is known, President Trump did absolutely nothing wrong. There's no evidence. There's no indication. There's nothing whatsoever to suggest that President Trump ever did anything wrong with regard to all of this. So many of us have known that from just the case files and everything going back for quite some time. But she vociferously and repeatedly goes to that. Okay, so people can put that aside now. I mean, I don't know how much more is going to be necessary for that to become. Look, there are people who will hate Trump and try to lie about him no matter what. But I think that's affirmed now in a way that we can move beyond it. She also says, essentially, nobody else did anything wrong. She didn't see any, meaning other than Jeffrey Epstein, she didn't see any criminal conduct that Jeffrey Epstein even did herself. There is no blacklist. Now, that's always been a shorthand, and people talk about a blacklist. What they really mean is people who were blackmailed. But, Will, as I was going through the transcripts, she says there was no blackmail. She also says, at all, of anyone, she also says that the money was made through high-stakes financial deals. What? There's some things here that just still don't add up, and I think we need further clarification on some of the points that she made, and I think that maybe that will be forthcoming from the DOJ.
So you're absolutely right, Buck. I think there are very legitimate questions about Ghislaine Maxwell's motivations and credibility. And in just a moment, we're going to be getting more into those deeper issues that accompany questions about blackmail and international or domestic intelligence. But let's stick with the names for just one more moment. Jason, I want to read to you now. We're working on ingesting this audio. This all just dropped about 1 hour and 10 minutes ago. But I want to read you now from page 265 of the interrogation from Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. He asks Ghislaine Maxwell, and you're not, I think you said, you're not aware of President Clinton ever going to the island. To that, Ghislaine Maxwell says, he never, absolutely never went to the island. And on that note, Jason, there have been a lot of questions. Obviously, the political focus has been of late on President Trump. We've heard Ghislaine Maxwell on Jeffrey Epstein's relationship with President Trump, but there remain a lot of questions about his relationship with Bill Clinton.
Yeah, this is a person in Ghislaine Maxwell that knows a lot about Epstein, that he has, erectile dysfunction, but, plays the part of Sergeant Schultz and can't recall anything that anybody did any wrong. That list may not be written down on some nice, cute spreadsheet, but it's in her head. And I wish they would just ask her the simple question. Well, then the people who visited the island, start writing down a list. If you're going to get limited immunity, you better start coming up with a list. And you can verify whether or not President Clinton went to the island. Go ask the Secret Service. There's a reason. The Secret Service is secretive, but they're also law enforcement. And if there was a commission of a crime, they still need to answer questions. They shouldn't be bashful about asking them. And I think they should go to that direction. But I don't buy what she's selling at this point. She is highly motivated to say whatever she needs to say in order to get out earlier. But come on, there's 2 people that went to jail. Only one of them is still alive. And there's nobody else that did anything wrong. And you can't come up with anybody else who did. What were these young women doing going to the island? Playing hopscotch? Getting lessons on how to sing or play the violin? Come on. There's a lot more here.
Okay, and here is another big question. We'll go to you on this, Selena. The question that everyone has been asking for several years. Did Jeffrey Epstein commit suicide? She was asked this, again, by Todd Blanche. Here's that exchange. Do you, so you think he did not die by suicide, given all the things we've just talked about? Ghislaine Maxwell responds, I do not believe he died by suicide. No. What do you make of that, Selena?
Well, I'm not surprised by that answer. This is someone that believes that they knew him well, probably knew him better than anyone else. So for her to make that assumption, that's not surprising. You hear that from people all the time when they lose someone to suicide. That I can't believe they did that, right? This is her version of saying that. So that doesn't shock me. The other thing I think is important to note, and the woman's name escaped me, but the reporter from Miami who had done such great reporting on Epstein has said all along that there never was a list. And so she kind of reinforced that. Now, to her other things that she said, like nothing, untoward happened. Well, she's just protecting herself, right? But in that moment, she's in that bubble of self-preservation.
The idea that there would be a list does defy common sense for any common criminal. Why would you maintain your own evidentiary criminality? But to Jason Chaffetz's point, that doesn't mean there aren't clients. Just because there might not be a list doesn't mean there are not clients. And Ghislaine Maxwell could be put to the test on naming the names, creating the list after the fact of people that she saw on the plane, Buck, or at the island. And again, we are digging through this virtually in real time. I'm not seeing that here. I'm not even seeing Ghislaine Maxwell pressed on what are the names of these clients.
Yes, I mean, if you were to take Ghislaine Maxwell at her word here, and I think all of us, you, Will, and the rest of the esteemed panel are looking at this like, come on, we understand that there's likely a lot being held back or outright falsehood at this point, although it'd be tough to prove some of those falsehoods. It depends. This is, I think, a moment where we have to ask, hold on a second. If she's unmotivated here to tell the truth, what are we going to get out of this? And I think that's where you have to see other aspects of this trial coming together, because she's telling us that essentially the only criminality that occurred here was Jeffrey Epstein's, that he hid, that even she, who was so close to him, didn't know about. It's just not credible. It's just not credible. That part of it, I think, is where it most obviously falls apart. And as for the list or the possible blackmail list, again, I think this is a little bit, the terminology has become a stumbling block here. It's, to your point, Will, clients, people who were involved with Epstein, who were giving him fantastic sums of money and other things, and we don't really understand still to this day. He was involved in getting like large sums of money back. How? What exactly was he doing? This is all traceable. This should all be trackable. I want to know how Epstein made the money that he did. I want to know what the transactions are he was involved in. And that should all be something that the Treasury Department, the FBI can get access to, because in the meantime, what we're left with is Ghislaine Maxwell effectively downplaying this whole thing. Yeah, he was a pedophile. He hid it from everybody. Nobody else was involved. There's no proof of anything else. There's no blackmail. There's no foreign intelligence tie. Oh, wow, that just brings it all together with a bow for her, doesn't it? She probably wants to get out early. So I think that we have more digging to do. I think the DOJ transparency effort here is the right thing. But the reason it's on a Friday, Will, is I think there are no smoking guns. There's other places we have to look.
Well, Buck, you appropriately pushed the conversation to the deeper and more important conversation. The existence of a client list or salacious names who may have had relationships with Jeffrey Epstein in some ways has been a distraction to the deeper story of who was Jeffrey Epstein and who were the people around him, like Ghislaine Maxwell. Who is Ghislaine Maxwell? For that matter, who is her father? Robert Maxwell. Well, this all came up in this interview. Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain podcast for full episodes right now.
6:32 this morning now here. We're hearing from the woman directly at the center of the Jeffrey Epstein case.
The Justice Department has released audio recordings of Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's former girlfriend. She's talking about the accusations made in the case. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez has the story.
Ghislaine Maxwell, in her own words,
I never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting in any way.
describing her interactions with President Trump decades ago.
The president was never inappropriate with anybody. In the times that I was with him, he was a gentleman in all respects.
She also says she does not believe former President Clinton did anything inappropriate either while interacting with Jeffrey Epstein, who would later become a convicted sex offender.
President Clinton was my friend, not Epstein's friend.
Over 2 days last month, Maxwell spoke with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who was once one of President Trump's personal lawyers.
You meeting with us today, we're really just meeting. I'm not promising to do anything.
The White House has been facing mounting pressure to release more information about the investigation into Epstein, who the Justice Department concluded died by suicide while awaiting trial in 2019. Conspiracy theories have swirled that he was murdered to cover up a client list.
Did you know of the existence of any such list?
There is no list.
Maxwell was asked about what she thinks happened.
I do not believe he died by suicide.
Still, she insists that Epstein likely would not have been targeted by someone outside the prison.
If it is indeed murder, I believe it was an internal situation.
Maxwell's serving 20 years as Epstein's co-conspirator in the sex trafficking of young women, though her attorney says she's innocent. The Justice Department turned over the first batch of its Epstein files to Congress in response to a subpoena.
I'm in support of keeping it open. Innocent people shouldn't be hurt, but I'm in support of keeping it totally open. I couldn't care less. You got a lot of people that it could be mentioned in those files that don't deserve to be people, because he knew everybody in Palm Beach.
We're hearing from Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's former girlfriend and the only person convicted in connection to his case. The Department of Justice releasing audio and transcripts from her highly unusual interview with the top official. ABC's investigative reporter, Olivia Rubin, has the latest.
New recordings revealing exactly what Jeffrey Epstein's longtime associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, told the Justice Department behind closed doors about President Trump.
I never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting in any way. The president was never inappropriate with anybody. In the times that I was with him, he was a gentleman in all respects.
Maxwell also shooting down a conspiracy theory pushed by some of Trump's own appointees that Epstein kept a so-called client list.
There's no list. There's never been a list.
And you never heard Mr. Epstein talk about such a list?
Never.
Those comments made during a 2-day meeting in Florida last month with the number 2 at the Justice Department, Todd Blanche, formerly Trump's personal attorney. The department now releasing that recording in full. Blanche questioning Maxwell as the Trump administration faced public outcry over its failure to release more information on the Epstein case. The New York Times reporting the decision came after Trump was informed his name was in those files. Trump now saying he wants it all out there, denying any wrongdoing. The appearance of a name in the Epstein files is not evidence of illicit activity.
I'm in support of keeping it totally open.
During her interview, Maxwell also shooting down claims about another politician, former President Bill Clinton. Despite allegations, including by Trump, she said Clinton never visited Epstein's now infamous private island in the Caribbean.
You're not aware of President Clinton ever going to the island?
He absolutely never went, and I can be sure of that.
But long before this meeting, the Department of Justice previously warned that Maxwell, now serving a 20-year prison sentence for sex trafficking, was not to be trusted. In 2022, they told a judge that Maxwell, quote, has lied repeatedly about her crimes. Now, years after her conviction, Maxwell continuing to deny she trafficked minors, exactly what she was convicted of.
I did introduce him to women. I did, but not underage women.
Olivia Rubin, ABC 7 Eyewitness News. promise, we got that breaking news. Good to be with you. I'm Katie Tur. We're following that news out of Washington, D.C., where the Justice Department has just released transcripts and audio from Epstein co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche to House lawmakers. Again, there is audio. The audio is coming. We are trying to turn it. Joining us now, MSNBC legal analyst and former Assistant Manhattan District Attorney Catherine Christian. New York Times opinion columnist David French is with us as well. I will note the interesting timing in doing both the John Bolton search today and releasing 263 pages of Epstein, of the Ghislaine Maxwell interview. I'm going to just now, it's going to take a bit. I'm going to read the pertinent interview portions related to both President Clinton and President Trump between Todd Blanche and Ghislaine Maxwell. I will also note that sitting in on this interview was an FBI agent, which means, and it's a proffer agreement, so if Maxwell lied to Todd Blanche or others, she could be prosecuted. Lying to an FBI agent, whether under oath or not, is a federal crime. So bear with me. I'm going to read it as we try to turn this audio. This is on page 103, again, of these 263 pages. Shout out to Tom Winter for finding it so quickly. Todd Blanche asking Ghislaine Maxwell, do you know whether, for example, President Clinton ever received a massage? Ghislaine Maxwell, I don't believe he did. Todd Blanche, and what makes you say you don't believe he did? Ghislaine, well, because I don't. So that's a good question. The time that Epstein and President Clinton spent together, the only times I believe, well, obviously they traveled. There was that, the plane. They went on the plane 26 times or whatever. That would be one journey. So they spent time on the plane together, and I don't believe there was ever a massage on the plane. So that would be the only time that I think President Clinton could have received a massage, and he didn't because I was there. Todd Blanche. And you mentioned that early in the very beginning of the conversation, you mentioned President Trump in the early 90s. Maxwell, yes. Blanche, what did you observe as far as President Trump and his relationship with you or Mr. Epstein? Maxwell, well, I just want to say for my relationship with President Trump, relationship's a big word, but I just want to say that I met him, or I believe I may have, because of my father in the 90s. Blanche, okay. So my father liked him very much. He was loved, really liked his wife as well, because we were both Czechoslovakian. And as far as I'm concerned, President Trump was always very cordial and very kind to me. And I just want to say that I admire his extraordinary achievement in becoming the president. And I like him, and I've always liked him. So that is the sum and substance of my entire relationship with him. Blanche. What about Mr. Epstein's relationship with him? Maxwell. I don't know how they met. I don't know how they became friends. I certainly saw them together and remember the few times I observed them together, but they were friendly. I mean, they seemed friendly. Blanche. Was that in social settings or was that in private settings? Maxwell. I believe I only ever saw them in social settings. I don't recall any private settings. Blanche. Have you ever been to Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach? Maxwell. I have. Blanche. In what time period are you thinking about when you say yes? By the way, these are pictures from Mar-a-Lago that we're showing on the screen right now. Maxwell. I don't remember when the president purchased Mar-a-Lago, so from whenever it turned into the club, I went there and I loved going there. Blanche. Did you go there alone or with Mr. Epstein? Maxwell, mostly alone. Blanche, do you know where? Maxwell, and the times I went there, it was for an event, maybe once or twice. Blanche, and do you know whether Mr. Epstein ever went there? Maxwell, I believe he did. But again, he didn't take me with him all the time. So he would go, he did from time to time, but he would go alone. I think he would maybe go himself to the spa. I certainly did. Blanche, did you ever observe President Trump receiving a massage? Maxwell, never. Blanche, did you ever observe, you said that have you seen, there's photographs, public photographs of Mr. Epstein and President Trump together? Maxwell, yes. Blanche, And there's photographs. I think you're in some of them. Again, these are ones that we're showing. Maxwell, yes. Blanche, as well. Those all appear to be social settings. Maxwell, yes. Todd Blanche, do you? Well, Maxwell interrupts. That's my memory. They were social settings. I don't know Epstein, if he had whatever the nature of the president's friendship, if you will, or however you want to define that with Epstein. I never witnessed. I think they were friendly, like people are in social settings. I don't think they were close friends, or I certainly never witnessed the president in any of, I don't recall ever seeing him in his house, for instance. I actually never saw the president in any type of massage setting. I never witnessed the president in any appropriate setting in any way. The president was never inappropriate with anybody. In the times that I was with him, he was a gentleman in all respects. Blanche, when's the last time you saw him in person, President Trump? Maxwell. It's been a long time. Probably not sometime in the beginning, mid 2000s maybe. And it would only have been a social setting as far as I can recall. Blanche, and did you ever hear Mr. Epstein or anybody say that President Trump had done anything inappropriate with masseuses or with anybody in your world? Maxwell, absolutely never in any context. Blanche, do you know whether 14 masseuses from Mar-a-Lago Spa ended up giving 15 massages? I'm sorry, take out those numbers. Do you know whether masseuses from Mar-a-Lago Spa ended up giving private massages to Mr. Epstein? I'm not asking for what you may have read, but at the time, from your personal knowledge, do you know whether that's true? Maxwell, I don't recall. Is it possible? Yes, but I don't remember. I don't remember that. So I don't recall that, but it's possible. Blanche, do you have a recollection of you ever recruiting a masseuse from Mar-a-Lago to give a private massage to Mr. Epstein? Maxwell, I never recruited a masseuse from Mar-a-Lago for that, as far as I remember. I can't ever recollect doing that. Blanche, okay, so what I think we should do now, it's about 12:15, we'll take a break, and we'll come back in a little bit. Maxwell, okay. Forgive me for the pauses in the reading. The conversation is broken in places, but that is the 2 pages that I think Tom Winter flagged as the most pertinent to the conversation that we've been having. Tom Winter joins us now, investigative correspondent for NBC News. Tom, what do you make of this?
So there's 22 references to Donald Trump on the first day, 3 references to him on the second day of the interview with Maxwell. I haven't read through all of the references to Trump. I highlighted the section where she's referred to in law enforcement circles as point blank asked, did you see that thing that people are talking about? You've just read there. It's a tricky read because the numbers are kind of combined with it. So that's why if folks are trying to understand that at home, there's page number, specific line numbers associated with each one, so it can be a little bit tricky to read off the cuff. As far as this interview, it was conducted with a federal agent in the room, with an FBI special agent in the room. And Blanche at the start of his interview says, look, you can tell us here today, we're just having a conversation. He starts out by saying, I'm not promising to send Judge Nathan a letter. That's the judge who oversaw Maxwell's case. She's no longer overseeing the case because she's been appointed to the appellate courts, and said, basically, you could talk about whatever you want. There's 2 big exceptions. The first one is there's an FBI agent in the room. There's other federal officials in the room. I'm a federal official. If you lie to us, you're on the hook. You can be prosecuted. So that was kind of a question going into this, which is, if Blanche was in there by himself, technically she could be charged with perjury, but then he'd be a witness to it. It'd be a bit of a difficult scenario. So now there's others in there. So that there's a hold on that. And we focus on perjury with Maxwell for a reason. I'll get to that in a second. Second thing is that if for some reason she is retried, there's overturned at the Supreme Court level, that this case somehow comes back, that if somebody were to say something specific to what she testified to, they could use that in a cross-examination scenario. So those are the 2 kind of caveats there. I know what you're about to read. I'll let you read it.
Well, I'm just curious.
Yes.
Have you, first of all, it's extraordinary to have this transcript, so I'm going to put that out there. I think it's extraordinary, you tell me if I'm wrong, for her to say this when she's asked about President Trump, for her to make a point of saying, I admire his extraordinary achievement in becoming the president now, and I like him, and I've always liked him.
Please pardon me.
I didn't say that for the record, but I
don't think anyone's going to confuse your voice with Catherine's.
That's correct. Yes, or Catherine's acumen. As far as this goes, none of this is surprising. None of what she says in the very limited amount of time that we've had to read it is very surprising. The references to Trump, there are a number of other questions that Blanche asks about other well-known business figures. Bill Gates, for example, to be clear, she doesn't say that she ever saw Bill Gates doing anything inappropriate. He asks about other Silicon Valley type figures. There's no indication that there's any sort of impropriety there. It's 263 pages the first day. I haven't gone through it. It's not exhaustive. But yeah, look, if in any other normal circumstance, this interview would not happen the way that it happened, period. This is a scenario where, you know, what does she kind of get out of this? Because there's no initial indication that she's pointing to any new specific leads. And in the first part of the first day, former personal attorney for Donald Trump is asking questions about Donald Trump and his involvement.
And she is talking about how Donald Trump has done nothing wrong, and this is being put into the public sphere. It's something that Donald Trump can use.
Let me start with you, Christina. Maxwell says Trump did nothing wrong, but she was being interviewed by Trump's former personal criminal defense attorney and now the deputy attorney general. Your thoughts?
So there are a few thoughts. One, I think that she's trying to do whatever she can to make sure that she does not spend the rest of her life behind bars. Yeah. Two, I think, Raul and I were talking about this earlier, they've got a bit of a conundrum in the sense that the Republican Party is obsessed with child sex traffickers. They're obsessed with conspiracy theories. So the Republicans have set this up where all the Democrats are these sex traffickers. But in this case, we're actually looking at someone who's a convicted sex trafficker. And so how do we get out of this situation? And we know that thus far, the past few weeks, every single thing that Donald Trump has done in the last 3 weeks is to distract us from this very conversation. Yeah. He's walking on roofs. He's bombing Iran. He's moving people into Washington, D.C., the National Guard. Every single conversation, the Smithsonian and the attack on U.S. chattel slavery, and it's just, it's a bad look for America. I mean, these are all distractions to take us away from this very conversation of Ghislaine Maxwell.
Well, I want to talk to you about all of that, but Raul, we can't ignore the credibility of the source, the former personal attorney in the criminal defense trials of Donald J. Trump. What was Todd Blanche trying to accomplish in these interviews?
Honestly, just strategically, I don't see what. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around what the strategy is here after saying there's no case, there's no more information forthcoming than to release this interview. And I'll tell you what really struck me about this interview, as you said, with a convicted sex trafficker. For a criminal interview, this was unusually cordial. In these type of interviews, if you've watched Law and Order, the best you can hope for usually is neutral. This was a very harmonious, it's just a very gentle type of interview, which is extraordinary for someone who is
at times he was finishing her sentences,
right, helping her and saying that he hoped she did not feel burdened, giving her some prompts, not following up on certain questions, like when she said she did not believe Jeffrey Epstein killed himself in prison. It was just the whole tone of this interview was extraordinary and not in a good way.
Randy, you have the fortunate and unfortunate responsibility of sort of watching what the MAGA base is doing online closer than anybody I know. Are they going to be satisfied with this dump today?
Yeah, they feel really good about it. It's over. The MAGA, the Epstein files are done and we can all move on. I'm really excited. No, absolutely not. And I haven't read through all of them yet, and neither have the kind, sweet folks that I tend to monitor online. They they are going through every single line, and I'm going through with them. And right from the beginning, right from the jump, what Todd Blanche says is, when we've talked a little bit off the record, we had some cordial hellos, and now we're on the record. And so everyone's like, what? What did he say? What did you guys decide on? Like, they will pick through every bit of this, and they will find more to unearth, more conspiracy theories will flow around it. But this is not the end. This is the beginning. Yeah, I mean, this is like the best thing that ever happened to them.
I'm very curious what Eddie Wong has to say about this. This is a disaster of Donald Trump's own making, I think. I mean, how are you seeing this?
Yeah, I mean, it just looks like kabuki theater. It's all set up. You see the levers. You see who has the kind of prerogative to play along. Ghislaine Maxwell, the appeal's coming up. She just got transferred to a better prison. She has all the incentive in the world to answer these questions in a way that DOJ and the administration wants her to answer. But I see it like this. If you zoom out, Jeffrey Epstein, convicted sex trafficker. Ghislaine Maxwell, convicted sex trafficker. Let's change the word sex trafficker to basketball. Convicted basketball player, right? We have photos, Donald J. Trump with these basketball players at the basketball court, maybe with basketball shorts on, and you're telling me they didn't play basketball together?
It's all right there. It's all right there.
Were you going to believe me or your eyes?
Right, and from what she's saying, the substance of her interview, there was nothing inappropriate. There were never inappropriate circumstances. The president has always been a gentleman with impeccable behavior. Things that contradict even what we as members of the public have seen with our own eyes. So this is high level to me, a certain form of high level gaslighting.
He just always happens to be at the basketball court.
Have you seen him dribble between his legs? I heard Robert Garcia, the ranking member on the Oversight Committee, say today, Professor, that these are 33,000 of perhaps 100,000 different documents. Eventually, one would think, or I guess hope, they'd all come out. What happens when time runs out and there's nothing left to release?
Right. Well, I think that they're hoping that they can run out the clock. Now, mind you, these aren't the documents that were in Mar-a-Lago in the bathroom. These are totally separate documents, and that we will have to sift through, and Brandy will have to sift through as well. But I think there are a few things. One, the MAGA crowd will never be satisfied, so we will unfortunately have a president who will consistently have to distract his base from this very real conversation, and he will have the courts and the Republican Party in Congress actually aiding and abetting him in doing so.
What are you have you seen anything online about the literally tens of thousands of pages of documents that haven't come out yet? What are people saying?
Release them. Release the files. We want all the files. And they want the files. We've talked about this before, but they want the files because they can create whatever narrative they want out of it. And once they have them all, I guarantee you that the people who believe that, Donald Trump is the savior of the world and is protecting us all from child sex trafficking, blah, 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 they will still believe that. They will find a way to construct that narrative because they always have. It's the not having it, not having the information puts a real damper on their ability to construct that narrative. So there's a lot of frustration there.
Right, and even having the files, anything that is redacted, and we know there are redactions in the transcripts, that is a launching pad for more conspiracy theories, like who was this person, what was this date. The possibilities are unfortunately endless for this going on and on in terms of the theories.
Guys.
The Justice Department handed over the first batch of files on the convicted sex offender to Congress on Friday afternoon, days after the deadline. And now, Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia, ranking member on the Oversight Committee, says a vast majority of the documents are already in the public record and aren't, quote, substantially new. The DOJ also simultaneously released transcripts and audio files of an interview between Epstein's imprisoned former associate Ghislaine Maxwell and President Donald Trump's former criminal defense lawyer turned Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. Maxwell, who is seeking a pardon for her 20-year prison sentence for sex trafficking and other crimes, maintained in her interview last month that President Trump and other famous figures were not involved in Epstein's trafficking ring. Here's what she told the DOJ about Trump.
I actually never saw the president in any type of massage setting. I never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting in any way. The president was never inappropriate with anybody In the times that I was with him, he was a gentleman in all respects.
Shortly after that interview, Maxwell was transferred to a much cushier minimum security prison camp. And after the release of the interview transcripts, Congressman Robert Garcia also gave a reality check on Maxwell, writing she is a, quote, known liar and, quote, desperate for a pardon. Joining us now, former state attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida, Dave Ehrenberg, and White House reporter for the Wall Street Journal, Sabrina Siddiqui. You know, Sabrina, I want to start with you. Before we get into the files and and the audio from Maxwell, do you think this is enough? Like what we've seen from the DOJ has started to release some things and it's trickling out. Is that enough for the Trump's base, who's really calling for this more than anyone?
I think that's the key question here. You've already seen some of the president's supporters cheering parts of the transcript from Ghislaine Maxwell that they believe exonerate the president. I think we'll talk a little bit more about why we should take a lot of this with a healthy dose of skepticism, given her lack of credibility and just the circumstances in which this whole interview was set up. But, I think that one of the pieces about the release to Congress is that it's only partial files. There's been a delay. So I don't think that this is going to stop the steady drumbeat of MAGA supporters who are calling for full transparency, but it may be enough to just quiet down the avalanche that pressure that the president was under.
You would think you would release all of it and just throw everybody under an avalanche of documents. That's what I would do.
Right. Well, how about just release the evidence, instead of anyway, I'm not going to get distracted. Dave, speaking of distractions, Dave, listen to what the president had to say yesterday in the Oval Office in talking about his support for opening the Epstein files. Listen to this.
I'm in support of keeping it open.
If they wanted to release,
people shouldn't be hurt, but I'm in support of keeping it totally open. I couldn't care less. You got a lot of people that it could be mentioned in those files that don't deserve to be. People, because he knew everybody in Palm Beach. I don't know anything about that, but I have said to Pam and everybody else, give them everything you can give them, because it's a Democrat hoax. That's just a hoax. The whole Epstein thing is a Democrat hoax.
He's still saying it's a hoax. I'm sorry, just your reaction. I can't.
My heads are going to explode. I don't know how it's a hoax when this whole conspiracy theory is supposedly about a group of Democratic elites like Bill Clinton and Bill Gates who have this sex trafficking ring, and when the files are released, it's going to expose them all. So where's the Democratic hoax? The reality is all this stuff is nonsense. It's a conspiracy theory. There is no evidence that Donald Trump committed any crimes here, so he should just let it out. But, it's a cover-up is worse than the crime, and that's what's infuriating the MAGA base, because they're not asking for a Ghislaine Maxwell transcript. They're not asking for limited grand jury transcript releases. What they want is the Epstein file to be released, and that has not happened.
What we saw and heard, I guess, from Ghislaine Maxwell over and over and over again was her complimenting President Trump, her distancing, trying to put distance between Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump. How is the White House taking this morning? I assume they think that it's going well because, all the stuff we have on our element sheet is her complimenting President Trump.
Well, of course, I think the White House is eager to highlight that Ghislaine Maxwell is essentially confirming what they say, that President Trump was not particularly close to Jeffrey Epstein, that they ran in some of the same circles, and that there was no inappropriate behavior, she says, on President Trump's part. Again, President Trump has not been accused of any wrongdoing, but at the same time, we have to look at the context here, right? President Trump was under this immense pressure to release the Epstein files after promising in his campaign that he would do so. He had backtracked from that commitment, and it was his own supporters who were turning against him. Now you have this interview in July that appears to also give very preferential treatment to Ghislaine Maxwell. She's moved to this cushier prison, as you said, and she's someone who has made it clear that she wants to end her 20-year sentence early. The person who is in a position to do that is President Trump. So the question is this all really designed to publicly exonerate President Trump and pave the way for some kind of broader sweetheart deal with Maxwell for her cooperation?
So, Sabrina, you are the White House reporter at the Wall Street Journal. And I point that out, Dave, because it's the Wall Street Journal that broke the story about the book, the birthday book. Gee, Todd Blanche asked Ghislaine Maxwell about the birthday book. Watch this.
Do you remember asking President Trump to submit a letter for that?
I do not.
And do you remember, would you have been the one to do that, or would somebody else have done that?
I did ask some people. I don't remember Mr. Trump. I don't remember who I did ask, but Epstein also asked people himself directly.
Okay.
So it could have happened that way, if it happened at all.
Okay, Dave, if you're going to have a Justice Department official go to speak to a convicted child trafficker to talk about an investigation, why is he asking her about something that was in the news just days before? What does this birthday book have to do with the situation she finds herself in?
This interview has nothing to do with evidence or filing charges against someone else. It's about exonerating President Trump. That's why they sent Todd Blanche down. Todd Blanche doesn't know the details of this investigation.
Exactly.
Right? If they really wanted to get to the bottom of things, they would have sent down a line prosecutor who is an expert in this.
Comey, who they fired.
That's who they should send. That's it.
But they fired her.
Oh, that's right. That's right. There's a purpose for sending down Blanche and no one else.
Right. We're going to bring in Melanie Zanona, who is there she is at the White House. Melanie, I want to.
Let me start with you, Christina. Maxwell says Trump did.
The Justice Department handed over the first.
There is no list. There is no. I'm not aware of any blackmail.
Ghislaine Maxwell's interview with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche went beyond her association with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. In newly released audio and transcripts, Maxwell also discussed her interactions with President Trump.
President Trump was always very cordial and very kind to me. I actually never saw the president in any type of massage setting. I never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting in any way. The president was never inappropriate with anybody.
The Justice Department also shared the first batch of files related to the Epstein case with members of the House Oversight Committee after a subpoena. The president says he supports the Justice Department releasing the files.
But I have said to Pam and everybody else, give them everything you can give them, because it's a Democrat hoax.
The Justice Department released the records after facing mounting pressure from lawmakers and President Trump's base for more transparency. The Trump administration faced backlash after a DOJ and FBI review found no evidence of an Epstein client list, and President Trump has dismissed the pushback.
So we had the greatest 6 months, 7 months in the history of the presidency, and the Democrats don't know what to do, so they keep bringing up that stuff.
Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney said no promises were made in exchange for her cooperation with the Justice Department. Erica Brown, CBS News, the White House.
Very much, you guys. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum, and a lot of breaking news this hour. We are just starting to get a look at documents that have been released by the Justice Department just a few minutes ago. This is the audio and the transcript from the jailhouse interview with Jeffrey Epstein's convicted accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell. Justice correspondent David Spunt is going through all of this from Washington. We're just starting to get a look, reading through some of the introduction here. David, obviously it's early. There's a lot of documents and a lot of audio here, but what have you been able to see in these so far?
Well, in just a few minutes, Martha, we've been looking through this, and we can tell you the top line here is that there's no client list, according to Ghislaine Maxwell, and there are no high-powered individuals that were on any sort of list. She did not incriminate anybody in that 9-hour interview that she did with the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche. She said right here, quote, "There is no list. We'll start with that. The genesis of that story I can actually trace for you is from its absolute inception, if that is what you're interested in. That's part of the DOJ transcript. Todd Blanche went down to meet with her in a highly unusual move last month down in Tallahassee, Florida, where she was serving that 20-year sentence at the time. Now she's been moved just outside of College Station, Texas. She was Jeffrey Epstein's longtime girlfriend. She was convicted of helping him sex traffic underage female victims. I've reached out to her attorney. I've not heard anything from the attorney yet, but she also said, quote, "I do not believe he died by suicide." The official finding was that Jeffrey Epstein died by suicide in his prison cell back in August of 2019 in Manhattan. She was charged a short time later. Again, she's serving a 20-year sentence. So Todd Blanche, Martha, goes down, talks to Ghislaine Maxwell, does a 2-day interview with her. This is all part of DOJ's transparency effort to get information about Epstein out there after the Justice Department earlier in July said that the investigation wouldn't yield anything else. It was closed. And there was major blowback toward President Trump, toward Attorney General Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel, and Deputy Director Dan Bongino, and others. It's interesting, and you can stop me if I'm talking too much here, but it is interesting. I noticed President Trump in the Oval Office, Martha, was just asked at another event, a FIFA soccer event about an hour and a half ago, about Epstein documents, and he commented on that. And he said, I told Pam, meaning Attorney General Bondi and others, to get as much information out as possible. But he said, I'm afraid that it might ruin some people's lives because anybody can be accused of anything. But really the top line here is Maxwell never had any type of client list of Jeffrey Epstein's, did not incriminate any high-power individuals. This coming from a well-placed source who's been briefed on this investigation. We're going through that as well. And then, not to give our viewers too much information, but the Justice Department today actually handed over a bunch of Epstein-related documents to the House Oversight Committee as part of its investigation. And we know that James Comer just put out a statement, and he basically said that DOJ put out its first production of Epstein documents related to the subpoena, but that's going to take a long time before they put that out to the public because they have to get rid of any type of incriminating information, not incriminating information, any identifying information, I should say, of potential victims, Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell victims, Martha.
Yeah, this is very interesting, David. Thank you very much. And we'll let you continue to pour through these. We're looking through these documents as we speak as well. Let's bring in Jim Trusty, former federal prosecutor, get his thoughts on the early release of this, or the early reaction to the release of this, I should say. Jim, welcome. It's Friday afternoon, heading into the last week of summer as we get this drop. Your reaction to it and what you've heard so far.
Yeah, I mean, all of it's really intriguing to me. I mean, again, the big picture is we don't normally look in prosecutors' files if there's not a trial. You know, we kind of let the evidence play out after an indictment. We see what happens at a trial. Here we've got this kind of bizarro world, I think maybe fueled by special counsels where they write reports, where everyone feels like we're entitled because we care so much about Jeffrey Epstein to look at all the evidence and find out if there's other names. Well, the reason we don't share files, yeah, it's partly to protect victims, and in this case, young women that were molested, but we're also protecting people from essentially defamation or guilt by association when they've never had a chance to totally acquit themselves. So this whole world we're living in now, where it's like, let's do an interview and then put it out for the world to review on a Friday, is kind of odd to me. Now, the starting point was a pretty typical starting point for federal prosecutors, which is a proffered letter. It's not full immunity. It's basically saying, for our conversation today, Ms. Maxwell, as long as you're truthful with us, we'll never use any of your words against you in any sort of prosecution. Again, very unlikely that there's going to be a new prosecution of her. But that's kind of a typical thing. They call it Queen for the Day immunity. And that's what she received to get this conversation going in the first place. And, it seems like a lot of it's probably going to be kind of just a little bit self-serving opinions. Like, it doesn't really matter what Ms. Maxwell thinks about whether Epstein killed himself, but she wants to opine about it.
So why do you think they decided to release this? As was just mentioned by David Spunt, the president was asked about this in the Oval Office when he was talking about FIFA and the upcoming events in 2026. And he said, well, I've asked Pam, the Attorney General, to put out whatever they can. And just going through this, there are names in here that have, to do with who her father did business with, and you can easily imagine people reporting, oh, well, this name and that name are in the Epstein file. But this is in sort of the groundwork that they're laying as they begin speaking with her about who her father, Robert Maxwell, a famous British publisher who was involved in a lot of businesses. So there are names in here that have nothing to do with the period, this is before she ever met Epstein. So I see what you're saying, James.
Yeah, I mean, that's troublesome, right? I mean, there's people that really didn't do anything wrong that are suddenly going to be in the spotlight. And that's just a kind of a strange scenario that we're finding ourselves in. As to why they released it, I mean, look, the grand jury materials, I think, were kind of properly protected by a judge who said, no, it's not enough just that the world's really excited and wants to know kind of scurrilous details about Epstein and Maxwell. The judge, I think, properly, respected the statutory protections we have for grand jury materials. This one's kind of different. I mean, I almost wonder if the Deputy Attorney General basically talked to the attorneys and said, my intention is to release this publicly, and maybe she'll get some form of credit for that. And so we have to kind of wait and see a little bit whether the jail transfer made anything or if that was just coincidental. And then there is a vehicle for reducing sentences for cooperation called Rule 35 of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure. It's conceivable that they'd say this was somehow very helpful and we're going to try to reduce your sentence. I'm not banking on that, but there is an actual mechanism they could use if they wanted to.
Well, we know that the families of the young women who were part of the Ghislaine Maxwell trial have spoken out very strongly, saying that they hope there is no leniency given to her. But we'll see if that happens or not. It's interesting, at the beginning of this document, Jim, she talks a lot about the fact that she just wants to tell her story to the government. And she says all through this process, the government never interviewed me, never asked me any questions, and I've always wanted to tell them what I know.
Yeah, that's a two-way street, though. I mean, look, most of the time, particularly while Epstein was alive and pending a case, it would have made a lot of sense for her attorneys to come to the government and say, hey, she's in a position to help you out, and go down that route of being a cooperating defendant where you don't get a free pass, but you don't end up getting 20 years. You get some sort of reduction for cooperation. That didn't seem to happen on her end either. I mean, there are circumstances where as a prosecutor you say, I'm not going to make a deal with the devil to go after a demon. I'm not going to cut slack to this person because they're at the high end. And she's definitely a partner of Jeffrey Epstein. But I think that if her attorneys had made overtures to potentially cooperate, she would have had that opportunity to tell the story. And, it didn't happen. I don't think she can quite blame the government for that.
Yeah, it also is coming out that she says that former President Clinton, she saw he was on the plane with Jeffrey Epstein. I think we knew that. She says she never saw him getting a massage on the plane. You think about how these things are going to be parsed and how carefully she may be phrasing some of these things, Jim?
Yeah, that's a red flag. I mean, it's funny when you talk about certain types of proffer sessions, when you meet with a cooperating defendant. I've had them with MS-13 members, and I'd rather almost have the shameless sociopath, somebody that'll sit there and tell you right to your face how they killed somebody and not really have any sense of dissembling or rationalization, than somebody who's a little more sophisticated, like some of the white-collar type defendants. And the reality is she seems like she might be quite capable of rationalizing, dissembling, being very precise to the point of perhaps being deceptive. So in any of these circumstances where you're talking to somebody with an incentive to please the government like she has, you have to be really careful that she's not kind of playing you for a tune and telling you some stuff that's just a little too self-serving.
So in terms of the government's ability to change her situation, she was already moved from a rougher prison environment to something that is a little bit more moderate, a little bit more comfortable for her to live in, I guess. What could happen to her next? Given the fact that she was convicted by a jury, what's down the road here potentially?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's totally in the hands of the federal government. I mean, there's two options. Her attorney was kind of shooting for the stars and settling for the moon, saying we'd be glad to get a pardon from President Trump. I don't know if that's in the cards. I don't think she's a particularly attractive candidate for a pardon or a commutation. But that Rule 35 I mentioned is a vehicle that can be used to reward cooperation. It's just normally the cooperation has to be a little more substantial than just feeding the press. It has to be something that helps you build a case or helps you, develop new targets. And again, too early to know what's in this whole series of transcripts, but it's not grabbing me that that's a likely outcome that would normally be a justification for some sort of benefit for her to reduce the sentence.
Yeah, I mean, that feels like the question, and you just put your finger on it. If it isn't information that is useful for a coming prosecution or a coming legal process, and it's just sort of to put it out there, it's hard to see what the leverage is for her in that.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's a lot of discretion. The judge has to approve of any sort of motion like this. And they usually do. If a prosecutor says, hey, I know this person never testified, but they gave us some information that was helpful, gave us some leads, that usually will sell where a judge will consider a reduction. Maybe not to the extent of a reduction that the prosecutor asked for. But here we're just in this different territory of there is no pending case. We wanted to talk to her to kind of satiate the media beast and the people that are all dying to hear all these kind of, sexy details. And I don't know, doesn't grab me as something where she's necessarily going to be able to prevail upon Todd Blanche and company to give her a reduction in her sentence, even if that's entirely what drove her conversation.
Yeah, well, certainly her story has spilled out all over the place. There's about 6 or 8, I guess, audio tapes that have been released, and the entire transcripts of the conversation between Ghislaine Maxwell and Todd Blanche, and more attorneys on either side. You can see these headlines crossing on the bottom of our screen that are also found in this transcript. She said that President Trump was a gentleman in all respects. She said that she didn't...
Breaking news tonight at this hour, as the country is seemingly torn in half over the release of the so-called Epstein files and the Epstein client list, we have proof that Jeffrey Epstein's child sex trafficking ring spans much further than just the U.S. I'm talking about proof that girls as young as 12 years old were flown from various countries to Epstein's island, where they were handed over like a pizza delivery to Jeffrey Epstein and his wealthy clients. It's like a dirt sandwich in my mouth. Why has this not been uncovered? I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. I want to thank you for being with us.
Hey everybody, Dr. G here. I'm a clinical and forensic.
Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to News Nation, my brothers and sisters. This is where right and left come to try.
Stand by, Katie. I want to bring in the great Glenn Kirshner is joining us. Glenn Kirshner is an American attorney, former U.S. Army prosecutor, and a former assistant U.S. attorney in the Office of the United States, attorney for the District of Columbia, and a former NBC News, MSNBC legal analyst. Welcome to the program. First to Katie, and then I'll get your response. Katie, should he just come out and say, do you think Donald Trump had a hit out? You know what I'm saying? That's what it sounded like to me. He was trying to ask. I don't know.
It just goes how it's so, and hi to Glenn Kirshner, one of my favorite people. Look, it just goes to show how absolutely inartful the questions were. It's like you could have picked anybody off the street and been like, hey, this is Ghislaine. Ghislaine, this is Joe. Joe, go ahead and ask her some questions. There was no purpose. When you are a lawyer, you don't even have to be a prosecutor, but when you're a lawyer and you have this golden opportunity to be able to obtain information that hasn't been obtained in decades, why would you not actually just pointedly say, did this person do this? Or the way that you phrase the questions are really important too, right? But when she says, he didn't die by suicide, well, heck, according to the DOJ itself, he died by suicide. So why didn't you actually probe her and say, well, actually, Ms. Maxwell, we conducted an investigation where we looked at the video surveillance, allegedly, and even though it's been doctored and put together, and the video surveillance doesn't show anybody going in there. So you're actually wrong about that, aren't you? No, we're just going to take what she says as gospel. Thank you that we worshiped at the Church of Ghislaine Maxwell and then walk away with it because it's self-serving to help Donald Trump.
Glenn?
So, Don, this whole thing is a charade. It is an exercise designed to exonerate and protect Donald Trump. I wouldn't expect for a minute that Todd Blanche, who was Donald Trump's former criminal defense attorney, and as Katie well knows, he now is the keeper of Donald Trump's criminal secrets that he came into during that representation, and he is duty-bound to continue to protect Donald Trump's criminal secrets because that attorney-client privilege survives the termination of the attorney-client relationship. There was only one person who should have been in that cell or that secure interview room interviewing Ghislaine Maxwell. That is Maureen Comey. She was the lead prosecutor on the case. She is the one who would know instantly whether Ghislaine Maxwell was telling the truth or lying about anything because she's the one familiar with all of the evidence. I have only heard just a little snippet of it. I actually just finished my daily video on the John Bolton search warrants of all things, which I think that was a distraction from the Trump Epstein Maxwell scandal. But this whole thing is a charade. Nothing Ghislaine Maxwell says or declines to say should be credited at all.
What do you think, Glenn, he was trying to get at that question? Because I was saying, just come out and ask her why are you beating around the bush?
Yeah, what was the question? You've got to read me in a little bit.
No, I want you to hear. I want to just play a little bit of the interview. I mean, a little bit of what we just played, because I want Glenn to hear it again. Let's hear it.
So you think he did not die by suicide, given all the things we just talked about?
I do not believe he died by suicide. No.
And do you believe that? Do you have any speculation or view of who killed him?
No, I don't.
And I ask that because if you don't believe that there's any truth to the allegations of blackmail or that he had kind of a list or that he had reasons to have people hate him, why would somebody kill him in prison?
Well, in prison, where I am, they will kill you, or they will pay, somebody can pay a prisoner to kill you for $25 worth of commissary is about the going rate for a hit with a lock today.
So that goes to the third reason, which is kind of the mismanagement. The shortfallings or shortcomings of the Bureau of Prisons.
Yes.
Which is a little bit different than my question is, which is, do you think there's somebody on the outside of prison? So putting aside what could happen on the inside, on the outside of prison, who wanted him dead so badly that he would have, or she would have, caused him to be killed on the inside?
I think I don't see that. I think it's possible. Of course, it's possible, but I don't know of any reason.
Glenn, what is he trying to get at there?
This is a meandering mess of a custodial interrogation just based on the little clip I heard. I don't know what he's trying to get at, and I question the tactical wisdom of asking a witness who has already said, I don't know. He's like, well, can you speculate? Not really. What about somebody on the outside? I've already said I don't know. I wouldn't read too much into the questions, but what I would offer is that this is a horrible way to go about questioning a witness. And I don't know what his background, his training, his experience is, but, I will fall back on this whole thing is ultimately an exercise in staying away from the danger zone, anything that could perhaps come back to haunt Donald Trump.
Is there any? Yeah, go ahead, Katie.
Sorry. If the viewers can see on the screen, if you look at line 10 right there, so that's how you read the transcript, right? So it's the page and it's the lines. You see line 10, 11. Do you have any speculation or view of who killed him? Answer, Ghislaine Maxwell, I don't. Let me tell you something, Dawn. Lawyer 101, when we teach trial skills, and Glenn knows this, doesn't make a difference if you're a civil lawyer or criminal lawyer. That would have been an objection in court. Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation. Speculation is it could have been Santa Claus that came in and killed Jeffrey Epstein. Nobody wants to hear that. And what he's trying to do is he was struggling, Dawn, to lead her down the primrose path for her to say, absolutely not. The guy, died because nobody else would ever want to kill him from externally. But she didn't get it because she's just too dumb to get that point. And so he just kept on trying, and it just kept on getting more and more mangled, to Glenn's point.
Yeah, I wasn't sure where he was going there. I'm like, is he trying to ask her? Is he trying to get her to exonerate the Donald Trump? Because what Jeffrey Epstein's brother has been saying, that he believes it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities that Donald Trump, this is according to him, not me, this is what he said publicly, that Donald Trump had something to do with it. If he is sitting there, if Todd Blanche has seen the Epstein files, so I would imagine he knows what's in the Epstein files. So I'm just wondering if he's trying to get her to say something that exonerates Trump, or I don't know, for some reason, because I don't know what the reason is, but something tells me there's something in there that they know that they don't ever want to release, and they somehow want what she says to become the record. You know what I mean?
Yeah, let me just say, and first of all, I'm so happy to be with my friend and former on-air MSNBC partner at 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. on Saturdays and Sundays, real primetime viewing there. But Katie and I used to double team on the justice front, and it was such great fun. But listen, speculation, Don, is poison to a good professional law enforcement investigation and prosecution. Do you know the first thing I do when I sit down with somebody that I am going to debrief? I said, don't speculate about anything. And don't only tell me what you think I want to hear because you think it will make me happy or it will forward the investigative ball against somebody I'm prosecuting, because I need the truth, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And if you don't give it to me, there's going to be hell to pay. Don't lie and don't speculate. This is a buffoonish little clip of questioning that we're hearing. And Jeffrey Epstein's brother's speculation, frankly, is no better than Ghislaine Maxwell's speculation or anybody else's speculation. Law enforcement, both FBI and DOJ prosecutors, we deal in fact. We deal in what we can prove. We don't start asking witnesses to speculate about stuff.
This is the one about, is there a black book? Is there a black book or a list of people who are, the Jeffrey Epstein list, as they say? Here it is.
During the time that you were with Mr. Epstein, and even in the 2000s when you were around less frequently, you never observed or you never saw any sort of list or black book or a list of individuals who linked to certain masseuses or
Absolutely
anything
no.
like that?
Absolutely no. There is no list.
There is no list. Glenn, why are you laughing?
Because I'm going to go back to Katie's point from a few minutes ago. I just heard Todd Blanche say, "You never saw a black book, did you?"
Yeah.
I mean, that is such a leading question. You are signaling the answer you're looking for, and she gave it to him. Mind you, she was indicted on 2 counts of perjury previously for protecting Jeffrey Epstein and herself. You think she's not going to protect Donald Trump and anybody else? Don, the reporting is there were more than 1,000 children, young girls, abused by Maxwell and Epstein, but there were no clients, there were no Johns, there was no one else involved in abusing these young girls that, Maxwell found and groomed and handed over to Epstein to be sexually assaulted and abused. And we all know, we have heard the reporting about Maxwell being a hands-on perpetrator herself. Come on now. And then Todd Blanche is feeding her the answers she wants. You never saw a black book, did you? You ask open-ended questions. You don't suggest the answer you're looking for.
Yeah. Katie, what do you think? There is no black book. There is no list, but there are names that she can give.
Of course there are. And that's why the Epstein files, look, when we're dealing with evidence in the legal sense, and even just in the common parlance of senses, when we're looking at evidence, we want to go to the source documents, right? So if somebody says, I've got 10 grand in the bank, what are you going to ask for, Don? Let me see your bank statements, right? Mm-hmm. Same thing here. If you go to the Epstein files proper themselves, that's going to be the source documents upon which allegedly Ghislaine Maxwell is relying upon, right? But here's the thing. Throughout the entirety of this meeting and interview, and I don't even call it an interview, it's really, like I said, they're just hanging out together. She never implicates herself in anything. Isn't that so convenient?
Yeah.
And the reason why we know this whole thing is a charade, and I love that word that Glenn uses, is the following. I'm going to go to the very beginning of this meeting that they had. And at the beginning, Todd Blanche makes it clear that she has been given immunity. But then he says to her, there is an exception, the most meaningful one of which is if you say something today that's not true, that's a lie, we can bring a prosecution against you for what's called false statements. Mm-hmm. I'm a federal officer. I have several officers here. The FBI is here. It's a crime, so you have to be truthful. Mm-hmm. We know for a fact that this woman has lied in this meeting. Where are the charges against her? Where are the charges? She lied. So any type of immunity she was given should have been blown out the window, and she lied. She's not being prosecuted for it. You and I both know you sneeze wrong these days, this administration goes after you. You look at somebody cross-eyed and they'll kidnap you, right? Off the streets. Mm-hmm. So where is the prosecution of Ghislaine Maxwell for violating the terms of her immunity deal that she had with the DOJ? It's because this was performative. There was no substantive value for this whatsoever.
Yeah, except to distract the public.
And Don, can I add that Prosecution 101, I've sat down with more aspiring cooperating witnesses than I could ever count. That was my stock and trade. I actually loved working with cooperating witnesses as a career prosecutor because they were my de facto expert witnesses on crime. They were living that life, and I had to impress upon them to tell me the truth, and then I would try to use them against bigger criminal fish. Here's the first thing you do with anybody in Ghislaine Maxwell's situation when you're sitting down to debrief her or do sometimes what we call a reverse proffer. I say the first thing you have to do is admit to all of your own crimes to me right here, right now. Because if you can't accept responsibility for your own crimes, I can't believe you on what you say about anybody else, whether you incriminate them or exonerate them. First, you have to fess up, and that will be a indication that you are really willing to tell the truth. And Don, that shouldn't have been a heavy lift for Ghislaine Maxwell because she's already convicted of these crimes. She could have easily said, okay, I did the things that a jury found beyond a reasonable doubt unanimously that I did. But if you don't fess up to your own crimes, you are dead to me as a potential cooperating witness because I will not believe anything you say about the crimes of others.
Okay, here's the thing that they wanted. Todd Blanche asking her about Donald Trump and anything that might be inappropriate behavior that she witnessed. Here it is.
I don't recall ever seeing him in his house, for instance. I actually never saw the president in any type of massage setting. I never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting in any way. The president was never inappropriate with anybody. In the times that I was with him, he was a gentleman in all respects.
How does that in and of itself not discredit her testimony? Just that, first of all, she refers to him as the president, Don.
Right.
Okay, that honorific, that title suggests a level of respect that she has for him. In fact, she spends a lot of time talking about how much she likes and admires him for what he's accomplished. She has such a bias that she would be laughed out of court if she was trying to be presented as a witness. But what do you mean you didn't see him do anything inappropriate in front of you? I don't know. Could he even be doing shit that was inappropriate behind a closed door that you weren't in? Of course he could, right? The reality is it could be any of them. She not only deals with Trump, she talks about Prince Andrew not doing anything wrong. She says Alan Dershowitz didn't do anything wrong. Look, I'm not saying they did. I'm not saying they didn't. How about we actually look at the Epstein files that is a part of the law enforcement's in Donald Trump's DOJ's care, custody, and control and possession. Why don't we look at that and make a decision on our own? Why is this woman the only filter right now that is being provided to the American people about what's contained or what is the history that surrounds the horrific acts of child sex predation, child sex trafficking, child sex abuse that she was convicted for and that Epstein was indicted for?
And Don, if I can ask, what is inappropriate behavior to somebody like Ghislaine Maxwell, who recruits, grooms, and sexually assaults children and gives those children to Jeffrey Epstein to sexually assault? You're going to ask her, did you ever see Trump do anything inappropriate? I mean, I would have to nail her down and say, Ms. Maxwell, in your opinion, is it inappropriate to recruit, groom, and sexually assault young women? Because that's what you did. You're convicted of doing. You don't ask questions like, what does a witness believe subjectively is appropriate, is not appropriate? I mean, again, this is just, this isn't even an interrogation. It's like a chat between a couple of, acquaintances.
Here is the president now, Donald Trump, today, speaking out about this Epstein stuff being released. Here it is.
Your Justice Department is also sending some of the Epstein files over to the House Oversight Committee today. Are you in support of them releasing all of them?
I'm in support of keeping it open. Innocent people shouldn't be hurt, but I'm in support of keeping it totally open. I couldn't care less. You got a lot of people that it could be mentioned in those files that don't deserve to be. People, because he knew everybody in Palm Beach. I don't know anything about that, but I have said to Pam and everybody else, give them everything you can give them, because it's a Democrat hoax. It's just a hoax. The whole Epstein thing is a Democrat hoax. So we had the greatest 6 months, 7 months in the history of the presidency.
Oh, God.
And the Democrats don't know what to do, so they keep bringing up that stuff. But it affected them. Bill Clinton.
I want you guys to pay close attention to this, because this reeks of hypocrisy and just disingenuity. He says, I don't want to hurt these people, but yet he brings them up and he mentions them, right? Keep going.
Bill Clinton was on his plane and went to the island supposedly 28 times. I don't want to bring that up. You have Larry, whatever his name is.
Did he not just bring it up? Did he not just bring it up?
I don't want to bring up the thing I just brought up.
Okay, keep going.
The head of Harvard, who was Jeffrey Epstein's best friend. Nobody ever talks about that. But I don't want to hurt Larry Summers. But he was best friends with Jeffrey Epstein. No, this is a Democratic hoax to try and get the significance of what we've done over the past 7 months. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. They say it's number one in history. Yeah. What we've done, including
No one has ever seen anything like rounding up people on the streets without due process, defying federal judges, laying off career people, brain draining our institutions of decades and decades of knowledge and historic information. No one has seen anything like this. The lies that come out of this administration. So yeah, he's right about that one thing. Sorry, I had to just say, go on.
7 wars. I mean, just include that.
How many?
7 wars, he says now. I think it was 6, then it was 7, it was 8, and I think it was 10 one day. Anyways, go on. You guys have the floor.
I want to highlight something here, and I think, Glenn, you
Katie's like, I don't even want to talk about what
I just cannot. You know what it is, Don? You know what's triggering me right now is that fucking hat. I want to take that fucking hat and shove it down his throat. Okay, so here's the thing. In the transcript, Ghislaine Maxwell admits that she has, quote, slow cognition issues. Okay? Now, when you are dealing with witnesses and Glenn dealing with flip co-defendants and all this other stuff, right? People who turn state witness or turn government, right? If somebody admittedly has slow cognition issues, we're going to have to pump the brakes now and talk about the value of this person. Why? Because what is your ability to recall, Ms. Maxwell? What's your ability to be able to remember? What's your ability to be able to process? I mean, she, by her own admission, has these slow cognition issues, one, and then two, but she conveniently knows that she's square. Jeffrey Epstein has erectile dysfunction, and she was happy not to have sex because she has a condition that made it okay for her not to have sex. It is the most ridiculous thing. So Epstein couldn't have perpetrated crimes because he had erectile dysfunction. And by the way, I didn't have to have sex, which means I, of course, would never be a child sex predator myself or a child sex abuser. And by the way, nobody did anything wrong ever. The most insulting thing about the Department of Justice is how it continues to perpetuate a lack of respect for the victims, not just the Epstein-Maxwell victims, but all victims of sexual assault, the survivors. Because how can you dare let this woman say that people have lied? People who have taken their lives, that they were liars? She said they all lied. She called them liars, Dawn. And that is disgusting, that the only thing that has come out of this Department of Justice has been a memo of lies from July 6th where they said there's nothing here, so we're not giving you anything. And now we're giving you transcripts that have been redacted. And you thought you were doing them a favor by redacting their names? But then you let this woman have audio and written transcripts that say that these victims all lied? It just goes to show how much this administration is willing to debase itself in furtherance of its dear cult leader. And Trump standing there saying, I don't have a problem with it, then let it out, asshole. But he won't. And if he does, it's going to be in a form that is going to be all disjointed. And Comer's going to sit there and he's already decided to whitewash it himself as well. It is such a travesty of justice. And the fact that it comes from the Department of Justice is the worst pill to swallow.
And there's a pattern here, Don, because I know we're going to talk about maybe the transcripts, the grand jury transcripts in both the Epstein and Maxwell cases. And we have 3 federal judges not only shooting down Pam Bondi's motion to unseal those transcripts, but saying some variation of, look, Pam, you all are engaged in a diversion. You are saying that there's something in these transcripts that would be new or enlightening when you know full well
there's nothing.
The only transcript,
them, right? Don't they know full well that they aren't going to release them, Glenn?
Yeah, of course they do. They make these motions as a show. Do you really think? Because Pam Bondi would have read that transcript forward and backwards, 70 pages, one grand jury transcript in the Epstein investigation in New York. It was an FBI agent relating nothing but hearsay. Not a single witness, not a single victim appeared before the grand jury. And the judge said there's nothing in here that is not already known to the public as a result of the Maxwell trial. So stop making, and I think one of the phrases was, false, misleading arguments to the court, and stop, Judge Engelmayer said, trying to give the illusion of transparency when all you're doing is trying to divert the public attention away from from the Epstein files, which Judge Berman, the last judge, said, you, DOJ, have the authority and you promised to release these things publicly. I mean, this whole thing it's a cover-up start to finish. Massive, massive cover-up by Trump, by his flunkies at the Department of Justice, by his enablers in Congress, and it's gross, it's obscene, and as Katie said, it's all being done in disrespect of the victims of these crimes.
Yeah,
it's tough to fathom.
One more thing that I want to talk to you guys about, and then we're going to move on to John Bolton and the raid on his home today. But since you said what you just said, Glenn, I want to play. This is from George Conway, who was on CNN today.
I wonder, George, what you make of the way that Trump has handled this, specifically today in the Oval Office during this press availability. He was asked about the release of these files, and he said that there would probably be a lot of names in them that wouldn't deserve to be. He mentioned Bill Clinton by name. He mentioned Larry Summers by name as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the real question is, was the release of this, were the selection of these documents selective? And that's the question. I mean, are they withholding documents that might refer to him or things that are embarrassing to him, and producing documents that refer to other people in order to distract? And I wouldn't put it past them that they would do that.
Would you? No?
Listen, they're not going to release the good stuff. They're not going to release the incriminating stuff. And there are no checks on what Pam Bondi directs her dirty DOJ officials to disclose or withhold. You know, the criminals are in control right now. There are no checks on prosecutorial abuse and misconduct. So unless there's a FOIA request, and there is a FOIA lawsuit that has been filed, Judge Chutkan has caught the assignment. And, you know, let's hope that can put some pressure from the co-equal branch of government that is still fighting to protect we the people from an abusive and criminal president of the United States, the judiciary. Maybe that will, you know, manage to wrestle free some of the actual and complete files.
Thanks everyone for watching. Your support means the world to us. So make sure you hit the like button and you subscribe to our channel to make sure that you never ever miss a video. We're live every day, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We drop even more content at 2 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you want more Don Lemon Show content, we'd love for you to become a member of the Lemon community, where you will receive access to special community posts. You'll get exclusive content and members-only live shows. So head over to our channel page or click the join button on this video. Again, thank you for watching. We appreciate your love and your support, and we will see you next time.
Well, the verdict in the court of public opinion is in. And it is not good for Donald Trump. 59%, quote, disapprove of the way Donald Trump is handling investigations into Jeffrey Epstein. Just 20% approve. Donald Trump is the first and only president in American history who had a long-term friendship with a man who raped children regularly, almost every day, while that man was Donald Trump's closest friend, according to that man. That's what Jeffrey Epstein, the child rapist and sex trafficker, told Michael Wolff in a tape-recorded interview. Quote, I was Donald's closest friend for 10 years. Everything Donald Trump does now is an attempt to get 59% of Americans to look the other way. Donald Trump is trying to get 59% of Americans to stop thinking about his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein and what Donald Trump might be trying to hide in the Epstein files that are in possession of Donald Trump's attorney general, who actually went to the Oval Office with Donald Trump's former criminal defense lawyer, who is now the deputy attorney general, to personally tell Donald Trump exactly how many times his name appears in the Epstein files and what the Epstein files actually say about Donald Trump. The Epstein files are the full Justice Department investigative file on Jeffrey Epstein and his co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell. And during the presidential campaign, Donald Trump told his followers that he would make the Epstein files public. Donald Trump's current FBI director publicly insisted before he became FBI director that the Epstein files must be made public completely, every word of it. Donald Trump's attorney general promised to make the Epstein files public while she was attorney general, saying on TV that she had the Epstein files right there on her desk and was ready to make them public. She said that she had Jeffrey Epstein's client list on her desk and was ready to make that list public. And then she issued an unsigned public statement saying there is no client list and not one word of the Epstein files will ever be made public by Donald Trump's Justice Department. And so it's not surprising tonight that 71% of Americans think Donald Trump knew some or a lot about the sex crimes committed by Jeffrey Epstein against children before the investigations of Jeffrey Epstein's criminal conduct even began. Only 8% of Americans think Donald Trump knew nothing about the sex crimes Jeffrey Epstein was committing against children. 56% of Republicans think Donald Trump knew some or a lot.
Today's date is Thursday, July 24th. This will be the recording of a proffer agreement of Ghislaine Maxwell from the Deputy Attorney General, DOJ, and the time is currently 9:16. Maxwell and counsel are arriving to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and we will commence the proffer shortly.
I'm going to ask everybody to put their name on the record, of course.
Good morning. My name is Assistant Special Agent in Charge Spencer Horn of FBI New York. Today we're doing a proffer of Ms. Maxwell. The date is July 24th, and the time is 10:12 a.m. This interview is being recorded.
And my name is Todd Blanche. I'm the Deputy Attorney General. And before we start formally asking questions of Ms. Maxwell, I'm going to put on the record everybody that's in this room in addition to me. Starting with you, Diego.
Diego Pastana, Associate Deputy Attorney General.
And then you heard from Special Agent in Charge Horn. Mark Beard from the United States Marshal Service is here as well. And then David?
Yes, this is David Oscar Marcus, and I'm counsel for Ghislaine Maxwell.
My name is Thea Sapian, and I'm counsel for Ghislaine Maxwell.
My name is Melissa Madrigal, and I'm counsel for Ghislaine Maxwell.
Go ahead.
And I'm Ghislaine Maxwell.
Good morning, Ms. Maxwell. How are you?
Good morning, Mr. Blanche.
Good. Okay, so before we started recording, we met for a few minutes. I introduced myself, and we chatted, and now I told you that we were going on the record. And before we start asking questions, I know that you've been given by your lawyer a copy of what's called a proffer agreement. And I just want to spend 2 minutes making sure that you understand what governs our conversation today. The most important part of this agreement is that this isn't a cooperation agreement, meaning that by you meeting with us today, we're really just meeting. I'm not promising to do anything. I'm not promising to ask Judge Nathan or any of the judges that's been assigned to your case to do anything. We're just talking, and so that's the most important part of this agreement. However, almost as important is the fact that what this agreement does for you is it gives you protection. So what it means is that the government cannot use what you say today against you, with some exceptions, which we'll talk about in a minute. But whatever you talk about today, you have what's called immunity. So that means that the words that you say today, we cannot use against you in a case in chief if we were ever to bring one. Okay?
Thank you.
There's exceptions to that. The most meaningful one of which is that if you say something today that's not true, that's a lie, we can bring a prosecution against you for what's called false statements. So I'm a federal officer. I have several officers here. The FBI is here, and if you lie to someone that's like me or like Special Agent Horn, it's a crime. So you have to be truthful. The other exception to this that doesn't necessarily apply directly to you, but if there ever was a retrial in your case, or if there ever was a criminal case, a future criminal case against you, and your lawyer or you said something different or took a position that's different than what you say today, we can then cross-examine you or a witness based upon what you say today. So it's a little bit nuanced, meaning I can't use what you say against you in our case in chief. However, if you were to testify, or if your lawyer called a witness to testify and they said something that is totally different than what you say today, we could then cross-examine you or the witness and say, hey, do you remember when we met with Miss Maxwell back in July of 2025? She told us, and then say what she said. Okay?
I understand.
Okay. Other than that, I know you didn't have a lot of time this morning to meet with Mr. Marcus, but did you have a chance to go over this briefly with him?
I did.
Okay. All right. So I've already signed it, as has Special Agent Horn, and Mr. Marcus signed it as well. So you got a pen? Please sign it right where it says clients. Yep. And I will provide a copy of this to your lawyers so you guys have it. Okay. Thank you. So, Ms. Maxwell, about a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago,
you see the light blinking on there? On the Sony. Yeah, there it is.
Okay, we're just confirming that it works, and it does. Ms. Maxwell, I guess about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, Mr. Marcus reached out to me and said that you wanted to speak with somebody from the government about not only your case, but about everything that's been in the media and that's been publicized about Mr. Epstein in your case.
That is true, and I did speak to him, and I did ask him did tell him that I was very keen to talk to anyone, because no one from the government at any time ever since the inception of the case, so dating back to the early 2000s, has ever spoken to me, and indeed I believe ever reached out to me at any time to even speak to me, and that includes up to when I was indicted and prosecuted. I believe that, or I understand, I should say, rather, that my attorneys at the time did tell the government that I wanted to speak to them because I was very keen to meet with anyone so that I could tell or have them ask me any question. I've never had any problem to speak to anybody, and I offered myself, and I kept asking if they would meet with me so that I could talk to them, and for whatever reason, that was not happening.
Okay. I have questions that I want to ask you, but I'm not, if there's a question that I'm not asking that you think should be asked, I invite you to volunteer. Same thing goes to your lawyers. Just to start a little bit, very briefly, can you talk about when you first met Mr. Epstein? I know that goes back a while. And just very generally talk about your relationship with Mr. Epstein from the time you met him all the way up until his death.
I met Mr. Epstein in 1991. I'd never heard of him or met him before, and no one in my family had ever either. My father never knew him, and I'll explain why that is the case.
Where did you meet him?
I had a girlfriend who I moved to America briefly I moved to America in 1990.
Okay.
Moved, that's a big word. I'd come to visit America in 1990. I had been running my own company up until that time, which is a company called Maxwell's Corporate Gifts. And I had also been working for my father at the time. I had multiple jobs with him. I was, in 1990, I was working with a new company of his, a new newspaper that he was launching called The European. And I was in charge of launching a magazine to go with the European. And I was traveling at that time from England to America because my father was looking to, he'd also bought Macmillan, the publishing house, and he had purchased the New York Daily News. And it's true to say that my father always wanted me to come back full-time and work for him, but that's a much longer story I don't think we need to go into at this time. So, but I was always working with him. There was no escaping, as it were, to work for him. So in 1990, I had come over to New York to help look at some of that. He was having some advertising issues with the New York Daily News, and in fact, I may have met Donald Trump at that time because my father was friendly with him and liked him very much. And I think it should be said that he also very much liked Ivana, because she was also from Czechoslovakia, where my dad was from. So I don't remember if I did meet him or not in 1990 with my dad, but I knew that that's how I knew about Mr. Trump.
And this was before you met?
This was before I met Mr.
Epstein?
Yes.
Okay. Right.
So I was already going backwards and forwards in America, and then in April of 1991, I came to New York. I can't remember for what reason, what business reason, but there was a business reason, something to do with my dad at that time. And a girlfriend of mine, an American, told me, I'd broken up with I'd been engaged, getting with a very long-term boyfriend, and we'd broken up. And she said, I got, as your girlfriends do, I've got a guy for you to meet. And I was like, who is it? And she goes, he's been dating my sister, and you'll love him, he's looking for a wife. I'm edging towards 30. I don't need to tell you guys that's a very important moment for a girl to think about important things. Sure, I'd be happy to meet him. And so sometime in 1991, we're in 1991, I met him at his offices on Madison Avenue. And I think the most memorable thing I can think about that is he was wearing a tie, which he didn't often do, and it had a giant tomato ketchup stain on it. So I was like, wow, okay. And that was how we met.
Was your meeting at his office for you to meet him just personally, or were you there for work-related reasons?
No, I knew nothing about him.
Okay.
He just invited me to come and have tea at him. And I was like, tea, that's English, okay. But what was unusual was in his offices. So I went to his offices and we met. And I found him very engaging, and that was that.
So, okay, so that's how you meet him. So, and again, I don't want to spend a lot of time, on this particular issue, but what happened with your relationship over the years from the time you meet him in 1991 up until the time he passed away? Just give the highlights.
Okay, so I was looking for real estate for my dad to buy some, and Epstein told me that he was also looking to move from his apartment, and would I help him? And I said, sure, I'm looking already, so I could look for him. So that's how it started. And then in 1991, my father passed away, and I returned to New York after that, originally to come back and help with family businesses, which was Macmillan, And then the debacle of my father's passing hit the family, and we lost all our businesses, and my family thought that it would be best if I stayed in America because of the intensity of the press and the drama surrounding my father's death in England. So I stayed, and Epstein said, well, you can keep helping me, you can help me find a house, and you can decorate the house, and it gave me something to do.
Were you in a romantic relationship with him at this point, or just friends?
Just friends.
And while we're just, with respect to your father, there have been multiple questions about whether he worked for any intelligence agency. Do you have any knowledge about that?
I think, well, certainly my father had a background in intelligence because he was, I believe he did in the Second World War, he was a British intelligence officer. I think that my sort of belief is that once you've been an intelligence officer, you're kind of always, it doesn't mean that you're formally employed. So I don't think my dad in any formal sense was employed by any agency, but when you are a very significant businessman and politician, as my father was, you meet with people all the time and you, I guess, trade business or ideas. I think if that would fall under that definition, that's how I would think of it. Now, he certainly, I have no formal knowledge of anything specifically that he did in that thing, but if you're asking me if I thought that he did help people, the answer would be yes, I did.
Did your father and Mr. Epstein have a business relationship over the years? I know we're maybe jumping around a little bit tonight.
They never met. So
as far as you know, they never even met.
No,
Or you know they never met.
I know they never met.
Well, how do you know they never met?
They just categorically know they never met. Well, because after in 1991, before my father died, he asked me if I'd met anybody interesting or whatever, because I was still trying not to be sucked back into the family business. And I told him that I had met Mr. Epstein, and the reason why I shared that I'd met Mr. Epstein because I believed at that time that Epstein worked for Bear Stearns, and Bear Stearns was one of our banks. And I knew that my father was friendly with both Jimmy Kane and with Ace Greenberg. So my dad was actually in New York, I think. If I don't think I had this conversation on the phone, but I honestly, we're talking 30 years ago, so I'm not sure. But maybe I told him this verbatim because I know that what my dad did, whether I saw it or whether he did it and told me later, I don't remember, but he called both Jimmy Kane and Ace Greenberg to ask what sort of guy he was and was he even allowed to, because
they never met.
He didn't even know
but
who
they
he was.
had they knew some of the same people, it sounds like, or certainly the Bear Stearns connection was something that you knew that they had.
No, well, he never had a connection with Epstein. He had a connection with the bank. I mean, Epstein, I'd never heard of him or knew of him before, and I certainly, if my dad had known him, right, when I said this is who he was, he didn't know who he was. So he rang Ace and he rang Jimmy to ask if it was okay that I even knew him. And I just want to explain briefly why my father would even do such a thing. I've had some interesting things that have happened in my life, and one of them was to be found on an IRA kidnap and murder list. And so after that happened, well, there were other related, I'm not going to bore you with all the horrible things in that vein, but if you want the details, of course, I can. But after that happened, my father wanted to put a lot of protection on me, obviously. And I declined on the grounds that that would be a very life-restricting event. You're all in law enforcement, I know you understand this. And so he had told me that, I would be taking my life in my own hands and whatever. And so I think after that event and several others where I had stalkers and all that thing that one has, he was always quite protective of me. And so if I met somebody, he would try and verify that they weren't going to do anything hideous. And so in case you thought it was weird that he would call Jimmy and Ace, it might, you may think it is, but in my from my perspective, he was just because he was concerned I was in America alone, and he had an opportunity to verify who this person was. And so I don't know if I was in the room with him, I don't recall, but I know that at some point my father told me, he's fine, you can see him.
Yeah.
He's safe.
Okay.
Well, okay.
So we might come back and touch a little bit more on that at some point, but
yeah,
I went down a rabbit hole for a minute.
That's all right, I just wanted to...
No, that's helpful, thank you. So, okay, so you're now in the 90s and you're friends with Mr. Epstein, your house, decorating the house.